5 players on the floor function as one single unit. Team, right? No one more important than the other.
Welcome to the Keeping the Nostalgia Alive show. I am your host, Billy Powell. You can go to Keeping the Nostalgia Alive, that's all one word, keepingthenostalgiaalive.podbean.com, and you can listen to, well, actually today's program is number 191, so you can listen to over 190 episodes of interviews with people associated with the great game of basketball from the state of Indiana. And with that being said, let's go ahead and introduce our guest for today. He is a 2019 Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame inductee, Coach Jerry Hoover, who I've been told also in doing our research is actually the father of Indiana high school basketball summer camps, if you want to have something tossed on there. But Coach Hoover, thank you so much for joining us, and I know your time is precious, but thanks for sharing your memories and stuff like that from the game of basketball from the state of Indiana.
Well, I'm just looking forward to the next few minutes.
Coach, let everybody know about where you are from in the state of Indiana, and tell us a little bit about your mom and dad. Were they athletic? And just give a little bit of a rundown on how you were introduced to the game of basketball or any sports, be that.
Well, I was born in Monticello, Indiana, and my mother, of course, women couldn't play. She was born in 1906, and so women couldn't play at that time. So she was a tall lady, 6 foot tall. My father was a German carpenter. He built houses, and his father and grandfather before him did that. And he passed away. My father passed away when I was a freshman in high school. And if he had not passed away, I probably would never have gotten involved in basketball, because he was a German and had certain ideas about life, and he thought that boys oughtn't to wear short pants, and you can't play basketball without wearing short pants. So after he passed away, I was in a little community, Monticello. I was 6'5", a sophomore, and so the coaches just drove my mother beside herself to let me play. And so I did not play until I was a sophomore in high school, and I was not a very good player. I only scored 36 points the first year I played, and then the second year I played, which was my junior year in school, I played on the junior varsity also, but had a decent year. And then I played as a senior on a decent team, 16-9, I think. So I played mostly around in the CIC in central Indiana.
Did you have a basketball hoop at the house?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Did you have a basketball hoop hanging or in the driveway or at the house?
Oh, yeah. We, like every family in Indiana, we had a basket, and we had a barn that I hung a basket on the inside of the barn, and as soon as we got the hay cleaned out, we would start feeding in the fall, and we started at the basket end so we could get the hay out of the way. And so the way it worked was we'd start in playing just, lay-ins, and then the more the cattle ate, and the more we cleaned the barn out, well, then the shots got a little bit longer as the year went along.
Was basketball your only sport that you played, or did you play baseball, or did you do any other sports while you were in high school?
Well, yeah, I did. I played football for a year, and I ran track for a couple of years. But I was a late maturing person. I eventually ended up being 6'7" and a half, and I really wasn't mature until I got out of college.
In football back then, was it true 11-man football, or was it a shortened game?
No, it was at Monticello played 11-man football, but when I coached my first job was at DeMont, and they had 8-man football, and then there were 6-man football leagues around Indiana in the 50s and 60s.
You know, I've scratched my head occasionally and wondered what it was like playing that 6- and 8-man football.
Well, it was a wide open game. The 8-man game was a little bit tighter, but the 6-man game was just it was a free for all. You know, the scores would be in the 70s because if you had anybody could throw it, or anybody that could run with any ability whatsoever, that you had the whole field to run in, and so it was a wide open game for the 6-man football, and then a little tighter for the 8 game.
You know, I was looking through some of the yearbooks doing my research to do this interview, and I saw that you had a little bit of maybe a knack for drama or for acting.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said I was looking through yearbooks doing some research to do this interviews, and I saw a couple pictures of you like in a drama club. Did you like to act, or did you have a little acting?
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't remember that. I was not in the plays. I don't know. That may have been somebody else, because I do not remember being in the spring and fall plays at all.
I'll have to send you this picture I have of you in a black bow tie with the yes. So you know, it was totally different back in your day of playing basketball. But what was there any kind of colleges asking you to come and play basketball for them, or did you have any other choices before becoming a walk-on and becoming a Purdue Boilermaker?
I did not, because of the fact that I was again late maturing. I only weighed 175 pounds and was 6'7", and so I was very skinny. And Manchester offered me a scholarship, and I just kind of wanted to go to Purdue, and there was a man by the name of Roscoe Frazier who lived in Monticello, and was an associate professor in ag at Purdue. And he took me down there one afternoon and introduced me around, and I just made up my mind I want to go to Purdue. So I went there and was fortunate enough to walk on and play a couple of years, or be on the team for a couple of years, and it was frankly, I wouldn't trade it. It was one of the best experiences, and turned out to be one of the most productive decisions in my life.
Now, we all know that Piggy Lambert is a legend at Purdue. Did you play under Piggy at all while you were at Purdue?
Yeah, he was the freshman coach. And I was there in 1952, the fall of 1952, and he was 64 years old. And then the next year, he was 65 years old. He coached that year, and then he quit. And they brought in a guy by the name of Paul Hoffman, who had played in the pros and was a Purdue alumni. He came in and coached the freshman team after that. But I value to be around Lambert to this day. He he was down at the end of it. He wasn't. He was just taking care of the freshman team, and he would sit us down and tell us stories about his early days playing in haymows and garages and different places. He played at Crawfordsville High School and then played at Wabash College.
He also coached. Did he also coach John Wooden?
Oh yeah, he coached Wooden. In fact, I only talked to Wooden one time. Doug Ogle, a coach at Warsaw, who just this year retired, used to set up little visits where 4 or 5 coaches go out and visit be with Wooden for about 8 hours. Go out to dinner with him the first night, and then the second day we just sit in his apartment and talk about anything that we wanted to talk about, and then at 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, catch a flight, leave the apartment, and catch a flight back to Indiana. And so I finally begged Ogle, and he finally consented to take me out there. And so I got a chance to talk to Wooden, and he told me that Lambert was the second most influential man in his life. He said that his father was the most influential, but that Lambert was the most influential man in his life. And he told me something that I couldn't believe, but it is a fact that Lambert had a PhD in chemistry, and that he taught classes at Purdue because when he went to Purdue, they didn't pay the coach anything. And so in order to make a living, he had to have credentials to teach some subject at Purdue, and he had a PhD in chemistry. And I asked Wooden about that again. He said he had a PhD in chemistry, and I said, well, Coach, that's really unusual, isn't it? And Wooden said they all did. In other words, he was talking about all of the Big Ten coaches at that time had credentials to teach because the coaching salary just wasn't there.
When chatting with Coach Wooden, was there, this is probably a little bit early in his career, but did you know that Coach Wooden was going to, did you think he had what it took to do what he, did? Because no one is ever going to do what he did in college basketball.
Well, I think that, it's a very interesting. I've read about him, of course, and he was at Purdue, and then his first job was and I can't remember the name of the town, but it was in Kentucky, and he was football and basketball coach. And the first day of football practice, he got into it with a senior on the team and just beat the living daylights out of it. They just got into just a regular fist fight. And so they fired Wooden. After one day, they fired Wooden as football coach, but they kept him as basketball coach. Then when the basketball season rolled around, and I find this interesting, Bob DeMoss, who was a quarterback at Purdue and also a Purdue football coach for 2 or 3 years, told me this personally. He said that, he was from this little town in Kentucky, and he said that when the basketball season started, that Wooden, the boys, a lot of boys had played football, so they were determined that they were going to show Wooden up. And so Wooden asked them for the ball, And he said, now take it away from me. And there was 5 of them, of course, and they tried to take the ball away from him. He just went in and scored on them. And he said, give me the ball again. And he did the same thing again, scored on them. 5 of them, it was 1 against 5 and Wooden scored. And so DeMoss said that he didn't see this, but his brother was there and participated in it. And he said that after that, Wooden didn't have any trouble with discipline because, they respected him because of his ability and his talent.
Coach, what was it like playing in the Big Ten?
Well, for, me, I was, my dad died. We had a 61-acre farm. And my mother didn't remarry. She took care of my brother. And so, we didn't have any money. And I didn't make all of, the walk-ons don't go on all of the road trips, but I got a chance to go to Philadelphia and play, we played Rutgers, and then we played Penn in the Palestra, and Coach Ray Eddy was the head coach, and he made us go see the Liberty Bell, and then he made us go, when we were in New York, we went and looked at the Statue of Liberty, and I saw different things that, a farm boy who had never been out of Monticello. It was pretty awe-inspiring for me.
At what point, was it in college or high school, or what point did you think, I think I would like to teach and coach this game?
Well, I went to the Army. I took one of the best things that I did in my life was to join ROTC at Purdue. And Roscoe Frazier, we were walking by the armory, and Roscoe Frazier said, you want to join this because you'll need the $30 a month. And so I joined ROTC, and I was the first person in my family on either side that had gone to school, gone to college, and then I certainly was the first one on either side of my family that had been in the Army, been in the military. So I didn't know anything about it. And I joined the military. I joined ROTC. So when I graduated from Purdue, I had to go on active duty. I went on active duty. When I came home from active duty, I farmed for 3 years. I had a farm, 600-acre farm at Oxford, Indiana. And I was an absolute failure at it. All I cared about was basketball. I refereed. I was running around refereeing, and I was an absolute failure. I wasn't married, and I just didn't like it, and it was not a fit for me. So I went back to Purdue and got the courses so I could teach and coach after I'd been in the military. So I was about 27 when I started coaching.
And you were in the National Guard for, 32 years as a brigade commander?
Yeah, I really liked that. I really liked, from the very beginning, I remember the first day we went out behind the armory, and they had a little bitty, very small field there, and there was 200 cadets out there. And so they divided us up into squads, and we I'm gonna have to clear my throat here just a minute.
Okay.
So anyway, I had a squad, And there was about 20 squads out there, and we marched around, and the idea was to keep your squad from running into another squad. And to me, it was just kind of like herding hogs back on the farm, and so I did that. And when we got done, the old sergeant that was in charge, he said, Hoover, you did the best job anybody here today. And he said, you get to march them back into the armory. Well, that was the first time anybody in the world ever said I did anything right. And so I got them back in the armory, and it made me feel good. And then, of course, when we went to the ranges, I could shoot pretty good because we had rifles around the house and so forth. And so it just, I liked it. And then I got when I went on active duty, I was at Aberdeen Proving Ground, and frankly, all I did was play on the post basketball team because there wasn't any national emergency. And in the summer, so in the winter, I played on the post team, and we played all over the country. And then in the summer, I took enlisted folks to see the Yankees. I took them to Yankee Stadium, Baltimore, and Washington on a bus, and was the lieutenant in charge, and then take them in to watch a ball game, and then come back home. And that's what I did when I was in the military. So I didn't really have any experience in infantry. I was in the Ordnance Corps. And when I got back to Monticello, I still had a lot of time to put in either in the reserves or the National Guard. And one day a guy came up that I graduated with in high school. He came out to my farm, and he said, we understand you got a commission, that you're an officer. And I said, yeah. And he said, we need lieutenant at the Monticello National Guard. And so I went in there, and it was an infantry unit. I got involved in it, and I liked it. And so I stayed with it. It was really a good option for me because Loretta, my wife, was always a stay-at-home mom. She did not work. And so, it supplemented, the National Guard supplemented my income. And then it also gave me an opportunity to learn to stand and talk to a group, and to be in command. And that's what a teacher does. That's what a coach does. So the two work very well together.
And how do you get your first coaching job?
Well, that's pretty interesting. Ray Eddy was the head coach of Purdue. And so when he heard that I was back at Purdue, he called me in the office, and he said, when you get ready, he said, when you get close to a job, he said, give me a call, let me know, and he said, I'll get the job for you. And then he added, he said, now, I don't want you coming in here and wanting me to call every whip stitch. He said, you'll know when you are close to a job. And he said, when you're close to a job, you call me and I'll get the job for you. So I interviewed at DeMont. It was a trustee system. Charlie Groot was a trustee. It's a Hollander community, all Reformed churches, and they're all Dutch. And so he was a Dutch, and so I interviewed, and the principal wanted his friend to get the job from Illinois. And so anyway, Charlie Groot went into the little filling station they had at this small community, DeMont, and they said, Charlie, who's going to be our coach? And he said, Jerry Hoover. And of course they said, well, who's that? And Charlie Crute said, well, I don't know, but Ray Eddy said he was good enough to coach at DeMont, and by God, that's going to be our coach. So that's where I got the job.
And how long were you there?
I was there 3 years.
And so what's it?
Never.
Go ahead.
DeMont had never won a sectional, and they had, Hollanders. Everybody in the place was 6'6", and they had 6'8", and occasionally a 6'9" and a 6'10", and they were tall, slow maturing people, and they had gone 64 years. They had not won a sectional, and I was fortunate enough to the first year have the same. I had a team, and I think we won 12 and lost 11 or something like that, and we got beat at Rensselaer at St. Joe Fieldhouse, and it was unbelievable. We got in the final game, and we played Rensselaer, and the Rensselaer people were German Dutch. They were, German Catholics, a lot of German Catholics, and they didn't like the Dutch, and so their cheers, they had cheers that they yelled, "Go home Dutch, go home Dutchman, go home Dutchman," and then they also said, "Stomp those tulips, stomp those tulips." And the Dutch themselves are really quiet people. They don't get riled up very much, and so that's the way they beat them. But I had everybody back except one kid the second year, and we went in there and had about the same team, and really got them. I did what Knight said. I want them more afraid of me, and I want them afraid of Wisconsin. And so I really got on them, and we won a sectional, and that really helped me a lot because we didn't win another sectional. I didn't win another sectional for a lot of years, but it got me jobs because taking a loser made a winner and then won the sectional.
And you did that with a lot of basketball programs, be it both girls or boys.
That's kind of the niche that I fell into. I just went from one school to another that was losing, and made winners, and then was able to go to another place. And at that time, the 60s and the 70s, there were. If the basketball team wasn't doing well, it was an embarrassment to the community. It was an embarrassment to the administration. It was certainly an embarrassment to the school board. And so I found out that because I could do that I could get more money, turn a program around, and then it just added fuel to the fire, and so then I can go to the next school and demand more money, and I needed the money because, again, Loretta didn't work.
Now, what was it like after winning the sectional there at your first job, and you're a young coach? You're a young coach. What do opportunities find you, or do you find opportunities once you started, getting into coaching?
No, the first job. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable because, anytime you go to a community, you've got people that believe in you, and then you've got detractors. And so my first job, there were people that didn't believe in me. But once I won the sectional, they all went away. They all either jumped on the bandwagon or they disappeared. And so I stayed there one more year, and it was a very enjoyable experience. I was able to do. We won 18 the next year, and it was just a good experience. And then I applied for jobs. I always applied for jobs, and I never got a job. I'm trying to think. I don't think I got any jobs because they came looking for me. I just would apply for the job, and then I'd get an interview, and then I'd get the job. But so I interviewed and got my second job was at Salem, and I really liked that town. Laredo, it was a nice town. They had good churches. It was quiet, just a wonderful place to raise children and everything, but they did not have talent. And I just felt like we got 11 and 10 team the second year, and I had a lot of them coming back, but I just decided that it'd be best for me to look around and get a job, and so I went to North Judson, and I stayed at North Judson for 5 years, and we had very, very good teams. We played. I was athletic director and basketball coach, and we had really good teams. We played 3 South Bend teams. We played Michigan City. We played East Chicago. We played everybody. And, we're winning 14 a year, 15 a year. And I probably did my best work at North Judson. And then I went to Lake Central and had good teams there. Finally we had a team that was 14-9, I think. Last year I was there, but we had players coming and it was looking pretty good. And I went to Ben Davis, and Ben Davis, of course, had an exceptional group of sophomores, and I played them and for 3 years, and we won a sectional there, and got beat in a terrible call in the final game of the regional, and frankly, I was fired at Ben Davis because I was kind of a square peg in a round hole. They told me when I went there, they had never had a Division I player, and they were the biggest school in Indiana at that time, and they had never had an Indiana All-Star, and they had only won 2 sectionals. And so I did what I had to do. We had 7 Division I players come out of the place in 3 years, and including Whitman and Randy Whitman, who later played in the NBA. But it just wasn't a fit because 80-some% of the teachers at Ben Davis and all of the administration at Ben Davis were from Ben Davis. And so what we did there to turn the program around and start producing players that could play at the next level, it ruffled a lot of feathers, and it wasn't politically the smart thing to do. So after that, I went back to Lake Central for a couple of years in administration. I didn't like that, and then I went on active duty for a while with the Guard, and then I ended up in Indiana State with Dave Shellhouse as assistant basketball coach.
Tell us about the relationship that you have with Coach Shellhouse.
Well, I didn't know him at Purdue. I did not know him at Purdue. But one night, on the night that they drew the sectional, the night after they drew the sectional in Brookston, Indiana, they had a gizzard and liver fry, chicken, gizzard, and liver. And there'd be about, I don't know, 100 coaches and referees show up. They did it at I think it was a Legion there in Brookston. But anyway, I was eating gizzards because I like them, and I was hungry, and I was eating gizzard, and this guy was right across from me, and he was eating about as fast as I could. And finally, I asked him who he was. He told me his day Shellhouse. So we got, we knew one another a little bit that night, and then I was going to Purdue in the summer to get master's degree, and I ran on to him in the summer, and he said, my wife needs a job. I just got married, and my wife needs a job. And he said, if you hear of any jobs, she's an elementary teacher. Well, we'd appreciate you keeping us in mind. So I went and talked to my superintendent, and North Judson is an hour's drive from West Lafayette. So I really didn't think that they would end up in North Judson. I thought they would end up, like at maybe West Central or North White or Brookston, someplace closer to Lafayette. But the superintendent said, well, you suppose he'd come here? And I said, well, I don't know. I'll talk to him. He said, well, if he'll come here, we'll hire his wife. And so I talked to him, and so they lived in North Judson for, I think, 3 years.
Wow.
And, of course, just having him around, he didn't coach because he was coaching at Purdue, but just having him around was a tremendous asset to our program. Then he went on and got into the college game at first he went to North Dakota State, and then he got the head job at Morehead State. And so, because we were friends and knew one another, I sent him a bunch of players. I sent him 4 players that were good enough to start for him for 2 or 3 years. And so we became friends. So then when he got the Indiana State job, well, then he asked me if I'd be assistant, and I wanted to, and so I was assistant coach for him for 3 years at Indiana State.
Now, at this point, I like to add a little entertainment to my shows. At this point, I've been told that, I don't know if at this point in your career, can you tell us a story about Victor and the Bear?
Yeah. I was at Lake Central. That I left North Judson, went to Lake Central. I was athletic director and basketball coach. And I had, when I went there, I told them what I told every school board. I said, we're going to fill this gym up. And I to this day, I think there's, you got to fill a gym. They've got these, Indiana is unique in the fact that the taxpayers pay for all these seats, and then you go to a place and they're not filling them, and it just, for some reason, it just seemed to me to be the wrong thing to do. So I told the guys at North, when I interviewed for the job, I said, we'll fill this place. And so I was teaching a course in economics, and the first period of the day. And so I went up, and we're teaching economics, and it was football season. And so I said, okay, how do we move this demand curve from, let's move this demand curve to the right. How do we do that? And kids have a very inventive mind. And so, they had 100 different ways that they thought they could get more people to come to a football game. But right at the end of the period, a kid said, get a dancing bear. And I don't know why that connection went, but I thought to myself, hell, what about a wrestling bear? So I went downstairs and went to my office, and of course we're right up there next to Chicago. Lake Central's right next to Chicago, so I called up a theatrical agent and I said, hey, is there anything such as a wrestling bear? And he said, yeah, there's one. He said, guy named Tuffy Truesdale, Cincinnati, Ohio. So I called this guy up, and I told him that I was at a real small school. We had very low budgets and blah, 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 and trying to get him beat down on price. And so he said, well, Coach, he said, you're too late this year. He said, we're booked for the whole year. But he said, we call me early next year, and he said, we'll see what we can do. So I called him early the next year, and he was going to be in Chicago on a Saturday night. And so we got this damn bear to come for $250, which is unbelievable price. And so the sports writers in Lake County, I had a great relationship with them in Lake and Porter County, Gary Post Tribune and the Hammond Times. And so all week long they're putting in the paper that Lake Central's got a 6'5", they got a new freshman moved in. He's 6'5", 565 pounds, and 6'5". And they said, we don't know about his academic credentials, but he certainly is a physical specimen. They talked about Victor the Wrestling Bear. So, sure enough, on Saturday, this guy showed up, and they hauled him around in a hearse, in a Cadillac hearse. And they brought him in there to the field house, back the hearse up to the in the field house. And then we had 2,000 kids at that time at Lake Central, and they were about equally divided between they called them the rah-rahs, which were the college prep guys and so forth, and then the greasers, they were the industrial arts guys, and then the burnouts were the guys who were smoking dope and so forth. So you couldn't get that place quiet. You couldn't get those three groups quiet if you there's no way. And so this Tuffy Truesdale, I said, what do you want me to tell him? And he said, just tell them that we've got a wild animal here, and unless they are absolutely quiet, we cannot guarantee their safety. So I said that, and everybody got real quiet. First time 2,000 kids was quiet in that school, because everybody's thinking that their safety was in trouble. So they brought him out, and the bear, he was they had a red stool, and he saw that red stool, and he went right over there and jumped on that red stool, and they gave him a Coke, and the biggest Coke that you can think of, they gave it to him, and he grabbed it, and he chugged that Coke in about 5 seconds. And then they brought some saltwater taffy out to get a picture with the cheerleaders. And so a cheerleader held her hand out and had that saltwater taffy in her hand, and a bear's tongue is about twice as long as his head, and that tongue come out and wrapped around her hand to get that saltwater taffy. And of course, 2,000 kids thought that the bear would eat her hand, so they're all screaming and hollering. And so then Tuffy, he talked a little bit about Victor, and how he found him. He found him in northern Saskatchewan in a camp up there, and his mother died, and he nursed him and brought him back. And he talked about how often a bear eats and this, that, and the other. And so finally then he said, Victor's got to get his rest. So they threw him in the back of that hearse and out through the door they went at Lake Central. Well, Kelly Camara, I don't know if you know that name, but she played at Purdue. And she was on the national championship team at Purdue. And her father was a hell of an athlete. And he played at Indiana State. He was about 5'10", 210, and could bench 400, 450. He's a horse. And he was PE teacher at Lake Central. So, and he ran around, and he had a paddle, and he had a leather thong through the handle, and he just ran around the school with a paddle. And he was also a wrestling coach. So he comes out, he's going to wrestle a bear, see, and the kids hated him. The kids hated him because they couldn't do anything about him. If they were 1 minute late for class, his answer was bend over, boom. And he hit them with that paddle. And if they didn't shower, bend over, boom. And, no uniform today, bend over, boom. And there wasn't a thing they could do about it because he was such a horse. So they hated him. And as a wrestling coach, the worst thing he had good wrestling teams, and the worst thing that happened was if you got dissatisfied with the way you were wrestling, he'd just say, well, you got to wrestle me tonight. And then he'd just pinch their little heads off, see? So everybody in the school was upset with him. And so he comes out there, and I said, and the opponent for Victor tonight will be our own wrestling coach, Coach Bob Camara. There's 2,000 of them going, boo, boo, So then, and we didn't rehearse this, I just said, well, Coach, what'd you think of your opponent for tonight? And Camara said, he's drinking Cokes, he's out of shape, I'm going to kick his ass. Just like that. So I said, well, if you want to get a ticket for tonight's game, get your fannies over there and buy them. And so we sold about 600 to 800 tickets in about 15 minutes. Buses were late. Everything was screwed up, and everybody's calling me raising hell principals and superintendents and so forth. But I said, hey, you told me you wanted to fill this place, and we're going to fill her tonight. So when the Bears came in, long story short, Camara wrestled the bear, and see, a bear, you can't beat a bear, because first of all, you can't pin him, because his shoulders are, how their shoulders are.
Right.
And then you got 560 pounds against 220 pounds. And all they do is they just put the bear where you don't want to wrestle. You'd rather be petted by little kids in the front row. But anyway, the toughie get behind him and slap him on the head and pinch his ears and so forth. And finally the bear, okay, I'll wrestle one more time. So then all he does is just put the guy in a bear hug and fall on him, and it's over. Well, when Camara wrestled the bear, what Camara did, instead of engaging him in a hug, Camara stepped back. When the bear acted like he wanted to hug him, Camara stepped back, and he forearm shivered that bear right under the chin, hit him as hard as he could hit him, and the bear went backwards end over appetite. And Camara jumped right on top of it and just beat the living daylights out of it. So the crowd, they were so happy that Camara was going to get his ass kicked. And then all at once, it was like oh shit, you know, Camara's going to beat the better. And so it just went silent. But then the bear figured out, he figured out that, you know, what was going on. He grabbed Camara and he flipped him over like a rag doll and sat on him. And that was it. And the place went crazy. The place absolutely went crazy. I've never been in any gym. Well, I was in one at Illinois State one night, but I've never heard a gym get that loud. And just, you know, it was just, so that's the story of the wrestling there.
Now, take us back up to Indiana State University. This was your first coaching stint at a university. What was it like? Did you enjoy Terre Haute? And I say that laughingly because I went to Indiana State University.
Yeah, because, hey, the college game, I wish I'd have got into it or could have figured out a way to get into it earlier because it's pure. Because all you do all day long is it's just basketball. You don't have to teach any classes. You don't have to worry about anything else. That just is just coach. And Shellhouse was a great guy to work for. He got all of us together and he said, look, there's four, you know, you got a staff of four, him and three assistants, and he said, look, we're not going to make this as tough. He said, we got I forget whether it was 12 or 14 scholarships at that time, but he said, we got to get 4 players in here every year. And he said, if we, the 4 people here, can't figure out 4 players that come to play at Indiana State without a whole bunch of rigmarole, he said, then we ought to all be fired. So basically, we didn't, you know, spend time sending out postcards and mass mailings and all that stuff that a lot of people do, and phone calls, blind phone calls. We just identified 20 people every year that could play at Indiana State, and we went after them, and each one of us had 4 of them and 5 of them that we worked on, and we recruit 4 or 5 people and that could play at Indiana State, and then put them in a uniform and get them playing. And Shellhouse was a good coach. He was a good coach. He has certain attributes that are really good, but he was an alcoholic, and so eventually he got fired, and then all of us got fired because he was an alcoholic. Now, to fast forward, he hasn't had a drink in 39 years.
Right.
He went to AA, got involved with AA, and he hasn't had a drink in 39 years. And so, you know, it was a great time for me because all you did was just basketball. You look at films and look at players, and it just was a good time for me.
And with the coaching change, where do you head out to after Indiana State University?
Well, I really had trouble. I thought I interviewed at Lafayette Jeff. I really wanted the South Bend Clay job. And because I've always thought the South Bend Clay, Hammond Morton, there's certain schools around the state of Indiana that have a good mix of a good ethnic mix. You know, like South Bend Clay had black kids, they had Polish kids, they had poor kids, they had rich kids, and it's just a nice situation to put a team together. I couldn't get that. I didn't get that job, and I've interviewed every place I could, and I thought, you know, dawned on me, the one going to get hired. And I think the reason was that people associated, everybody knew that Dave was drinking, and I think everybody, kind of was shied away because they would think that I would be drinking too and so forth. So I came home one night, and Loretta was sitting there, and I said, I don't know what we're going to do next year. I said, I don't think I'm going to get a job. And she said, and she changed my life right there. She said, well, would you take a small school? And I said, no. I busted my ass to get to Ben Davis and Lake Central, and, I thought that Lafayette, Jeff, South Bend, Clayton, New Albany, some of the places that I was interviewing, I was perfectly qualified to coach there, but I couldn't get the job. And she said, when you were talking to me about getting married and being a coach's wife, you didn't mention the size of school. You told me that you wanted to help kids. Well, see, she had me. And it made me mad. And so I said, well, get that book in here. So we got the book in there, and the worst job in Indiana was Monrovia. They had not they had not had a winning season in 20 years, and they'd won one and lost 20 the year before, and they graduated the 3 top scorers. And so I called the guy up. I called the superintendent up, and I said, hey, is that job still open? He said, yes, it is. And I told him who I was, and he said, is this Jerry Hoover that was in it at Ben Davis? And I said, yes. He said, what in the hell would you want to come here for? He said, this is terrible, Jerry. And I said, well, I'm not going to blow smoke. I said, I can't get a job. And I thought if I can't get the best job in Indiana, I'll just take the worst one. So I had to go there 4 times to get the job because I know what they thought. They thought I'd jump. I'd sign a contract, and if a job came open in August, I'd take it. But I made up my mind I was going to stay there, or at least do it for 1 year, and I went there, and that's the only place that I went that we didn't get actually have a winning season. I didn't turn it around to get a winning season. We won 8, I think, 8 or 9, but we lost the first 4, and then I had them backed up in a 2-3 zone, and I had a guy by the name of Watson that could shoot. He later played at DePaul at Greencastle, and then the rest of them I just made them spot shoot. If they got off of that spot, there was dire circumstances. So we just played real slow and waited and get a spot, knock it down, go down, get into 2-3 and play. And so then, of all things, we were in a sectional with Bloomington. They were number 1 in the state. I'll be gosh darn if we didn't blow through them in the sectional. Of course, we got beat. But then my brother got killed in a highway accident, and so I moved to Kankakee Valley. I only stayed there 1 year, but I loved those kids and I loved the community, and they offered me a 4-year contract, which was unheard of in those days. They offered me a 4-year contract to stay there, but I went ahead and went to Kankakee Valley, which was closer to where my mother was living, and I could be closer to her.
Coach Hoover, I have a question for you. We are already 1 hour into a show. I was told by several people that we would probably have to do multiple parts. Can we do a part 2?
More than I miss coaching. That's fine with me. And of course, I taught government for 40 years, and I think that teaching, it's certainly teaching history, economics, government, social studies courses. That there's three things that should take place. First of all, Jesus was a great teacher because he told stories, parables. That's how he did it.
Right.
And then Socrates asked questions, the Socratic method. And then the third thing is you got to keep it light. You got to be able to. The stories themselves have got to have a little bit of humor in them. Questions have to have humor, because if you don't, the people learn better when they've got a smile on their face than they do if they're about half asleep in some trance, you know.
Correct.
And so I enjoy stories, and I am always looking for interesting people, you know, to tell me stories. And of course, the job I've been in, it's been twofold. If I was in a better job, I would have run into more interesting people. But being a coach in Indiana, small towns, you run into a few interesting people, and so they tell you interesting stories, and so I just take it from there. And everything I read, I'm the poster boy for the virus. They're looking for me. So, you know.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, so 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock your time again next Monday morning.
9 o'clock next Monday. That'll be fine.
Thank you, Coach Hoover. I appreciate it.
Thank you.